I was shocked. I was like, what? Go back? I had forgotten about this place. It was out of the question going back. I saw my body, my physical body, as just a lump of something. I said it was like a banana peel. It was like this organic waste, and just throw it away. I wasn't concerned about it or with it at all, and definitely was not getting back in it. That was out of the question. And then suddenly he says, "Time to go back," and that just shocked me. I grew up here in California on the coast, normal kid. I was into sports and, a lot of nature stuff, a lot of in the woods with growing up and backpacking and camping and all that. Surfing came into that. And so I was outside a lot. I was in the ocean a lot, swimmer, water polo, all that stuff. Had a bunch of wild friends, surfer buddies and stuff. We were all on this swim team, and it was good. My family was awesome. A couple of sisters, and my mom and dad, absolutely right out of a, you know, 50s sitcom, like Father Knows Best or something. It was a wonderful childhood. I grew up having this sort of reverence for others and stuff, and that led to the fire department. There was a thing with nature. The fire department was exciting for a kid, and then, when I hit my late 20s, it was really obvious there was something very powerful about going to somebody's home and they're having the worst moment of their life, and diving in and doing your best to make a difference. That really affected me. I loved it, and even though it's hard on the guys, this stress and stuff, um, it sticks around. You see the things that you see in your career, you see them their whole life like a slideshow. But kind of like this NDE movement, this spiritual movement, it was real. It was real emotions. It really made a difference in the world. So that was me. I started that at on a hotshot crew at 19, and then just kept working my way up. Engines and helicopters and backcountry stuff, and met my wife in college, and we've been together since I was 22, 23, and she's perfect in every way to this day. And so, yeah, I'm really blessed. It was in 1994, and I was 38. I got exposed to a patient on a call. It was during a flu epidemic. It was called the Beijing Flu. We got her to the hospital. She got better, but I took her breath into my lungs. And a few days later, I was so sick. It was crazy. I was super dehydrated, and I could tell something was seriously wrong. So I gave a call for help, and fire department came, medics came, and ended up in the hospital. Some things went wrong there in the ER. Emergency room was full of old folks and kids, and they were taking a priority. And so everybody was well aware that this flu epidemic was, harsh. And I was young and healthy, so I was kind of set aside, and they'd get to me when they got to me. And the nurse came around, and she gave everybody the same thing, and she was in a hurry. She just plunged it in. And usually, if you're around the medical world, you count those things in. You watch your watch, and you push a little and see how the patient does. But my wife was there when that happened, and she said, "Your eyes rolled back, and you went straight back, like you were clowning around, and you were gone." And they couldn't get you back. They couldn't get a blood pressure, and they Narcaned you a bunch of times to reverse the Nubane. this synthetic morphine. It was a precursor to fentanyl. It was only on the market a year or two, and they pulled it off because it was just killing people left and right. And then a couple of years later, it got reworked the formula, and that became fentanyl. But yeah, it knocked me for a loop. I was out cold, and my wife filled me in on all this other stuff. But to me, I was just the next thing I remember, I was flying through this black background and just this sea of stars, and they were all had color and vibe to them, and everything that was there was awesome. You never wanted to leave. And I was parading through these stars, these, you know, energetic beings. And the emotions were nothing but acceptance and all that, love and praise. And the biggest thing on my mind was as I was flying along, I was this huge expanded cloud. I wasn't this person anymore, this single, this separate. I belonged everywhere, it seemed. And I kept saying over and over, I was like, how in the world did I forget who I really was? It was, a really super good trick that I thought I was this guy, Bill, this dude who had this whole recipe of, who he was and what he liked and all this stuff. And all of it was it was like a game. It was absolutely understood that that was not real. It was some kind of illusion. This material world that seems so solid to us and so definite, it was absolutely not real. And I was just really shocked that I fell for it. And I was flying along and everything was just awesome. I could stay there forever. It's like I'd been let out of a closet and I was stuffed in there. And it was like this huge relief, like, oh my God, this feels so good. Like diving into a pool on a hot summer day. And that really surprised me because that's not anything I ever heard of or talked about and then when I got back, I talked about it a lot until it was like frowned upon. It's all a really well-crafted illusion. I was like, how in the world did I forget who I really was? Because I absolutely was this bigger version of me, although I was everything that you're talking to right now. This guy, Bill, it was seamless and it was, a flawless change. A lot of NDEers don't even know they've died. This is really common. Because the voice in your head is the same, just this backstory has changed. I mean, it's like I was tricked, I was fooled into believing I was this single. And then all of a sudden I was in this room. It was like a clinical, and I've always said the same thing, that it had indirect lighting. There wasn't any light fixtures, there wasn't any on-off switch, on the wall. The whole room was just lit. And you're in, what I say now is like you were in the light, you were the light. And right in front of me, there were these three short little hooded guys. Mm-hmm. And they were just exuberant. They were like on me, or like right away asking questions. They had big smiles on their face, and they were like, how was it? What did you learn? And I was just looking at them, and they looked exactly like those guys in the movie Communion. They were super happy and just these giggling munchkins. And they knew the whole story because one of them came forward and he looked me up and down and could see from my energy or something that I didn't remember them. And I wasn't fearful. I wasn't trying to get out of there or anything. I was just sort of like, well, where am I now? Was the thought. And he turned to the other two, and they're all giggling and bouncing up and down. And he said, he doesn't remember us. And they all giggled uproariously. And we're super excited about that. And I thought that was funny. And I said, well, give me a second, guys. This is highly unusual for me. I just got here and I kind of remember you, but give me a little time to sort it out. And it kind of came together after a while because my wife, when we first got married, she was like, she'd say in the morning when you're coming out of sleep, she says you're giggling and you're like somebody's tickling you and you're talking in this like nonsensical language. She said it's really bizarre. And she said it's like, there's a bunch of puppies climbing on you or something. And she goes, "What's going on?" And I said, "Well, there's these guys and they're in front of me and I can't see them. It's like there's a like an X'd out veil that was down. I could kind of see like the lower part of them, and I would be straining. And she would say that you're like straining, your eyes are fluttering, and you're trying to see something. And I go, yeah, I can't get a fix on them, but they're super playful. I would just wake up lit with energy. It wasn't all the time. It was maybe every 2 months or so.
Mhm.
I would wake up and I would have had this experience where there was somebody in front of me, but I couldn't see him. There was some kind of a veil, but it had the same vibe. I think that's part of the illusion. We're not supposed to remember who we really are. We're supposed to sacrifice and suffer in this place until we stop reacting to it and realize who we really are and just proceed in that, with that vibe. And I think that's how we, manage to get out of here is we keep our wits about us when we head over into the other side. And it's not a big surprise anymore. You don't go through this fit of confusion where fear kicks in and then you're stuck, for another round. I think that's what's going on. We all have this other life, many other lives, other planets, things are going on, but we don't remember them while we're here until we start remembering. And when we start remembering, then the illusion's breaking down. And that's what I think's going on. And we're able to navigate out of here. I had this thing in my youth, and then this NDE was very similar. And there was another guy, and he was in the background. And he was this tall, wispy guy. He had this spinning energy. And he came forward. He had this huge smile on his face. And you could tell he was super happy, like his favorite nephew just toddled into the place. And as he came closer, that energy just kind of enveloped me. And it was this energy of love. And it's overwhelming for us because we're not used to it. We don't experience it here, a real love. Um, and I just wanted to fall to my knees and sob and cry because I don't know, it felt so good. It was, that's what love does to us. That's why women cry at weddings and stuff. They can't contain it. And, we had a conversation, small talk. Every time I said, or thought, or said something, he chuckled like, like a father figure. He just was chuckling at this little toddler and everything was funny. He was smiling all the time and chuckling. The little guys were bouncing around and giggling. And I was like, well, this isn't very organized. These guys, I'd like to get out of this facility and go back where I was. Obviously, this is some sort of stop here. And I wasn't scared or anything like that, but it was just like, okay, I just like to move on from this place. It's nice to see you guys again, but I was in a really way cooler place a second ago. And so I said, "Would you guys want to get on with that thing with the check, reviewing your life? Is that something that we're going to work into? And would you guys like to get that started?" And the tall guy just cracked up. And very clearly he said, "Sure, sure, we can do that. How do you want to start?" So I just started talking about things. I didn't have any major complaints, I didn't rob a bank or anything like that. And uh but I did have this job offer on an island that my wife wanted to, she did, it wasn't a big thing to her, but she just said, "Why don't you take this park service job? Because we'll be on an island by ourselves." And, we were in our 20s. I didn't want to be stuck on an island. It's an hour off the coast in a helicopter. And I wanted action. I wanted, to go to fires so I'd go now, and I'd go now in a heartbeat, uh, and never look back at the mainland. But then it didn't seem like something it was right up her alley because she's a, that's how she is. But yeah, so I talked about some things like that, and I don't know, a couple other things, and then right in the middle of it, he goes, "Okay, that's enough." And he came forward, and the three little guys just were like they were reassigned. They just like shot out of there, and they came in for for this appearance, the show and tell. I think I'm absolutely convinced of that, and the reason I'm absolutely convinced of it is because my story is so big, and it's influencing millions of people, at least planting a seed like, okay, maybe I can look at who I am differently and lighten up a little bit and enjoy this place because it's not serious. And I think that was, because he said you have to go back and you have things to do and they're important. And it absolutely, has occurred. I was shocked. I was like, what? Go back? I had forgotten about this place. It was out of the question going back. I saw my body, my physical body, as just a lump of something. I said it was like a banana peel. It was like this organic waste, and just throw it away. I wasn't concerned about it or with it at all, and definitely was not getting back in it. That was out of the question. And then suddenly he says, "Time to go back," and that just shocked me. And I had a bunch of stories, things like I was almost 40. I told him I'm pretty much done. And I said, my mom and dad and my wife will miss me, but everyone else will be pretty cool. And I said, even them, they'll be fine. Give them a couple weeks. They'll be back to normal. And he laughed at all of that. And he kind of said, okay, that's good. You're going back. And he kind of stepped into me with that swirling energy. And then the room came apart. Like I was in a transporter, just like Star Trek. And I was beamed out of there, and it was a sinking feeling. It was a dropping feeling, like the floor fell away and I dropped. As far as physically falling somewhere, okay, maybe, but what I think really was that the frequency changed and I was going to a lower, denser energy. And I was coming back to this realm. And, these light realms, they're all around us. They're just at a higher frequency. And, to them, we're like a houseplant. We're just sitting there, not doing much of anything. And they're shooting around at the speed of light. And so for your listeners or your viewers, everybody has woke up in the morning and had a feeling of falling. That is soul travel. We do it at night, and you're dropping back into your body. It's all in the pineal gland, this thing with, the third eye. At night, the pineal gland drops a little DMT on the brain, and then you escape the body and you soul travel. You move in other dimensions. You return to that eternal being that you are, this energetic being, and then you come back here. And that dropping down I think, is dropping down in frequency and coming back into this very dense place. And at the time of death, the pineal gland splashes the brain with a huge dump of DMT, and that rockets the soul out of the body permanently. They're reporting a true experience, this DMT, this sacred fluid that, is like a doorway to these other realms. When I woke up, I was pissed, and a nurse came by, and I wanted answers. First thing I asked her, I was like, "What am I doing back here? I was out of here. I was home." And I told her I had bought the farm, and I'd been there all night with the blood pressure of 0/40 or something. And she said, "Honey, you've been in escrow all night, as far as buying the farm." And she goes, "But you fell out of escrow and now you're back." And she was real serious. She looked me right in the eye. She had her arms on my shoulders. because I was a little animated, and she said, "You're gonna have to get your head around that. You're back with us. Most NDEers don't get that, but I was grounded by another, you know, um, kind soul, and it was great. I didn't know anything about journeys out of the body or any of that, Monroe, any of that stuff. But yeah, I told the doctors, and they made fun of me. And I told everyone in the place. I told them, and then my family came, and I was just like, blah, 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 blah. These guys were so cool, and we don't have any idea what we're really into, and it was out of the question. I was a total Goomba. My family looked at me like I could see the disappointment in their eyes. It's like
Oh,
he's been in this like induced coma and he's got brain damage, and I could see that was they were disappointed, and so I lightened up on them, um, and then when I got back to work, everybody had heard because there was firemen that came to see me in the hospital. And when I got back to work, the whole department was like, "Dude, what happened? Everyone's talking. You had this thing." And I'm like, "Sit down. I'll tell you." And I wouldn't leave anything out. And I told it, just like I told you. And uh, after a while, there was a guy came down from the office. He was dropping off something, and he goes, "Hey, just so you know, they're talking about you up there in the chief's office. They think you need like a psych eval or something." And I'm like, "Okay, I get it, and thanks for the heads up." And so I zipped it, and I dummied up for 15 years until I retired. And I've had a couple of guys that were, a lot of my guys I used to work with have seen these videos. And a couple of guys have called me and said, we were on a fire and we were in the backcountry and it was late at night and where everyone's looking at this, we're on the fire line, we're looking at the stars, and you started telling this story. And I'm like, I did. I tried not to. And they're like, everybody was blown away. And he's like, I never forgot that because you weren't lying. And I said, yeah, I tried to keep it quiet. But yeah, I did. I told it if it came up, and it was the right setting, I would tell it. But I wasn't going on podcasts. I wasn't on the radio or any of that stuff because my story was so unusual. And now it's not so unusual. I started looking around when I retired and got with some shaman, and that was, the ayahuasca thing. That is very powerful. It's very similar to a NDE, except you're yanked out. You drink that DMT and you're yanked out of your body, and most people have no idea what to make of it because suddenly they're faced with this view of this higher version of you. This you can experience the soul and the higher self, and you can look at the physical world self and say, man, that dude is blowing it, with his thoughts. And because the whole evening can just be really hard on you. I spent this time in this place in the jungle in Central America. I did a lot of the things that they do, silence in nature, eating high vibration food, breathing, all these things that Joe Dispenza is teaching on Gaia. These are all the way back to who we really are. It's ancient knowledge, and they were doing it in the jungle 10 years ago or more, 12 years ago, and something opened, and I just started seeing all kinds of things, and persists to this day. Colors around people, different faces. Your faces would change on people, past lives could see them for some reason. The closer you get to the supernatural, the closer you get to the mystical world, the divine world that's all around us. This veil, this lack of knowledge about the other side, about who we really are, it's coming down. It's the time of secrets has passed, and the veil is being lifted, And pretty soon there's going to be undeniable evidence that, these non-physical beings are all around us. They're unlimited variation. And we're in this sort of challenging role as a human being temporarily. And there's going to be all kinds of explanations as to what's going on. I think probably 20% of the population within the next year or two is going to be seeing these things regularly. And that's just going to continue to open as time goes on. As we call it global warming, we call it climate change. The frequency of the planet is going up, and we're going back into the light. And we can, with different strategies, we can ride the wave. But most people aren't going to figure that out. They're going to become fearful. That's what humans do. The good news is you can ride the wave. Get back to nature, get back to the sun, get back to the vibrant frequencies that are in fresh plants, drink structured water, and take time, meditate, and sit quietly in silence and stillness in nature, and turn inward. Because the outward stories are going to get ridiculous, but you can go inward and you'll be fine.